Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the different drills and exercises, which is basically a combination of drills that I run people through and kind of put them into context. Okay, so a lot of times people will question, what's the point of that exercise? What about if that happens and the other thing happens? And how does this exercise prepare you for all those other things that might happen? Okay, so the thing to be aware of is a self-defense encounter is highly unusual, right? As far as a self-defense encounter where you have to respond with deadly force, it is highly unusual. It is highly infrequent. So because it is unusual and infrequent, there's really no set pattern as to what is likely to happen. Okay, so you really have no idea what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how many people are going to be there, what the lighting conditions might be, what the ground level might be, whether it's going to be flat ground or whether it's going to be in the woods or something. You got no idea. Okay, so because there's so many permutations of what could possibly happen and how it could play out, we have to kind of break it down, right? So we have to first break it down into individual drills where we are learning and practicing our, specific, specific motions repetitively and getting good at them, right? And then we start putting together a few of these drills into an exercise. Now, to give you guys an example, a lot of times the same people that will question the validity of this exercise or that exercise, are quite comfortable, right, going to a range, a two-dimensional range, where you stand on a line and you're only shooting straight ahead of you at a known target that's not moving. Okay, well, that's a drill, right? That's just a drill, because when in the real world are you going to walk up to a table where you have your ammunition, you got your magazine, you got your gun, you're going to load it up, put it around the chamber and shoot at a known target in front of you, okay, at a fixed distance. Okay, that's not realistic, right? But that is a drill that once you get good at that, then you can proceed to the next level. Okay, the next level is usually being able to draw from a holster and shoot, right? So that's the next thing I teach people: how to safely draw from a holster, present the firearm, get the sights on target, shoot, and then safely reholster. Okay, so again, that's an isolated drill, because when in the real world are you going to be standing perfectly still if you're being attacked? That's not realistic. But you got to get good at this one thing so before you can advance to the next step. The next step might be, taking that side step, okay, to shoot, right? Getting off the X, basically, right? Don't be predictable. Don't stand where your attacker expects you to be, or moving to cover and shooting, or shooting on your way to cover. Okay, so as you add more and more things, this gets, it can get really complicated. And if I try to make people do, like too many things at once without having practiced the individual aspects of that in isolation, they get really, really sloppy. Okay, so that's why we practice things in isolation. Okay, so that's why when, a lot of times when you're looking at an exercise and you're saying, well, that seems like, you're shooting there, but what about if you got an attacker from here? Well, that's the next step, So that's an important thing for everybody to understand, that you have to practice things in isolation, and then you start adding things to that, right? You practice one aspect in isolation, you practice another aspect in isolation, then you combine the two, then you do another two things in isolation, and then maybe add those things. And there's literally like I have a book full of like hundreds of different drills and exercises that I can combine together in different permutations, right? Like, for example, the very simple thing of drawing from a holster, presenting and shooting. Okay, well, that becomes a whole lot more difficult if I have you run a couple of laps around the woods and then have you shoot at that same target. Okay, it's also very different, if you're standing on level ground, or if I tell you to get in there in uneven ground and shoot from that position. Okay, so again, all these things have to be done in isolation, because I'm not going to have you run through a whole course on uneven ground, you know, if you've never shot on uneven ground. So first, I'm just going to have you shoot some basic, some simple shots from uneven ground, shooting, you know, either from a high position to a low position, or a low position to a high position, something that you've probably never done before on a two-dimensional range. And then little by little, I start adding things. Okay, so that's one of the important things to consider when you're, you know, when you're looking at different exercises that you see instructors, you know, putting together, right? You know, why is this being done, or why is that not being done? Because everything's being done in isolation. You know, get good at this, and then we'll add something else on top of it. Get good at that, then we'll add something else on top of it. Now, the question a lot of times will become, well, what is the likelihood that all these things are going to come together in a real life self-defense situation in exactly the way that you're putting it together? And it's not. It's never going to do that, which is why I'm constantly changing the order and the different exercises that we're doing in different combinations and different permutations. Now, the most important thing to understand that what I'm really trying to do with all these different combinations of exercise is I'm getting people to be able to execute them under stress, okay? Because that is the key element to a self-defense type of situation that is very hard to replicate, especially on a two-dimensional range, right? Where you're only standing in one position, shooting in one direction, right? You're not under any stress. So one of the key things that I try to replicate on the range is I try to induce stress, right? And I don't do this the very first time you're shooting, but over time, I basically get you to be able to shoot well under stress and make decisions, right? Do you go in that direction or you go to that direction? Is that a better piece of cover, or is that a better piece of cover? You know, so all these are decisions that have to be made under stress, under a very limited time. Okay, so that's the really, that should be the focus of self-defense training. Okay, being able to execute all those isolated exercises that you practice in different combinations under stress and being able to make the right decision. Okay, so that's kind of like the focus of what I do when I train people, or even when I train myself. You got to be able to perform under stress. Now, one of the exercises that I do is I don't like heights. I don't like being 10 feet up on the ladder. So a lot of times I will climb a ladder, which is something that's very uncomfortable. It makes me nervous, right? So I'll climb up on the ladder and I will shoot off the ladder, just because that's something that makes me uncomfortable. Okay, it makes me nervous. So I need to be able to shoot well in exactly that type of situation, a situation where I am uncomfortable and nervous. Okay, so hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it helped people to understand the where self-defense training needs to go. Okay, it's not, it's not, self-defense training is not target shooting. Okay, again, target shooting is what I teach I teach target shooting to 10-year-old kids. Okay, I teach it to Boy Scouts. Okay, self-defense training is supposed to go way beyond that, ultimately to being able to to make good decisions under stress. Okay, so the stress part is the most important aspect of that training. I'll talk to you all soon.